Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source. We appreciate you joining us. Josh Heupel kicks off his era of Tennessee football with a victory over Bowling Green on Thursday. We'll talk plenty about that as we kick off our 19th season here on the Sports Source, all thanks to you and our sponsors. We have, if you follow me on Twitter, you saw the teases last week, we have a couple of guys. We're a couple of guys short today. We got one in COVID quarantine. We got somebody else who had a bit of an emergency this morning. But we'll be back to having our usual 15 guys on set next week, I hope. But let's get right into it. Our first segment of today's program is brought to you by Junk Be Gone. And let me tell you, we wouldn't be here 19 years if it weren't for sponsors like Mike Such and his family run business, Junk Be Gone. Just a business I use every year personally. Home or business for you, they can help you get rid of junk, right in the name, trash, old furniture, broken down items that are cluttering your personal space. You don't need them around anymore. Junk Be Gone. Either they'll bring you the dumpster and you load it up, or they'll send a team out there and they'll be all masked up if you ask them to, and they'll take everything out that you need loaded up. JunkBegone.biz to learn more. All right. Wave one of our panelists today, we have VFL Will Overstreet. And, you know, I appreciate you being here. You got a bum knee, so you're going to be locked into this chair for the whole day.
That's right.
Will Overstreet, thanks. From WNML AM and FM, Jimmy Himes. Jimmy, you did a radio show this morning. Thanks for hustling on over here. Appreciate it.
I'm just a bum.
You're just a bum.
Bum knee.
And right, speaking of bums, right down there next to you, Bob Hodge, longtime sports writer in this town, and one of the guys who's been here for all 19 years. Bob, thanks for being here.
Amazing, and I'm just 29 years old.
It's incredible. It's incredible. All right, Tennessee wins over Bowling Green 38-6. We'll get into a lot of specifics today, but let's start with a very general question to begin with. Did any of you see anything, good or bad, that changed your outlook on Tennessee's season in terms of what you expected this team to be able to do, what you expected win-loss-wise? Anything stand out to you that went, uh-oh, or, hey, this is going to be better than I thought? Did that game move the needle for anybody at all?
I had an uh-oh moment. Well, uh-oh thought, and it's a passing game. I thought the passing game would be better than it was. That's not just Joe Milton. The receivers dropped a couple of passes. So that part of it concerns me a little bit. Not enough for me to change my prediction on the win-loss record because the defense was better than I thought it would be. The defensive line played really well. But if this passing game doesn't improve considerably, then I'll change my prediction, but I don't want to base it on one game.
Very good.
Nothing at all. I kind of thought that game was a wash. I mean, Bowling Green's so bad that you just don't have anything to say, okay, Tennessee really needs to work on this. Well, there are some things I guess you could say that. I just think you have to take into account how bad Bowling Green was. So all the positives, okay, they're kind of negated a little bit. And does that take the negatives and make them look a little bit worse because you're going, well, that's not a good football team they're playing against. So nothing at all to change my opinion.
Will Overstreet.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you saw a few things in areas that improved. I mean, the defensive line is obviously better than it was last year. I think you saw the secondary was not confused. People had more of what was going on and not having to check off and be in the wrong position at the end.
Tim Banks said he was going to simplify the defense, and I thought it looked like
it did. I mean, guys were playing upfield fast. Secondary came up and played the run a lot better than they have in a couple of years. Offensive line obviously dominated, but like we said, you're playing Bowling Green, and then when you look at on Saturday and you see Georgia's defense and you see Alabama's defense and you see Pitt scored 51 points, there's nothing that really says, did I change my outlook? We're playing Bowling Green. How good are we? That's what you're going to find out closer this week. So nothing really says anything more than we beat the team in front of us.
Right.
To go to Will's point, that is a bigger positive maybe than I made it out to be. The fact that you didn't see the confusion out there. You didn't see guys pre-snap getting – John and I were talking during the game, and I told you how the quarterback for Bowling Green just looked confused several times. He stood there and just looked like he didn't know what was happening. You didn't see that from Tennessee on either side of the ball, so that might be a little bit more of a positive than I was wanting to give it credit for.
I agree with Jimmy that, I think it's fair to ask questions after one game. Obviously, it's what we do. It's what fans do. But it's awfully quick to be jumping to conclusions after one game. I saw people saying, well, this team's going to win 4 games and all that kind of stuff. You know, it was just 2 years ago that Tennessee lost to Georgia State, then lost to BYU, and then won 8 games. So you don't want to jump to conclusions, positive or negative, after a single game. I also think that when you look at Bowling Green, you have to say, okay, I'm grading on a curve because you weren't playing somebody good, so that's kind of a negative. At the same time, it's your first game in a new system with a new coach. I'm going to grade you a little on a positive curve there. Kind of cancels out. I think it's kind of a wash. Jimmy, one reason it might not have changed your outlook is you talked to an SEC coach recently. You posted this at sportsanimal.com. Is it sportsanimal.com or sportsanimal99.com?
991 the Sports Animal. There you go.
Whatever. You can find it. Google it. But you posted it. Very quickly, what did that coach tell you about the outlook?
He said that there were 2 things. One is that Coach Heupel inherited a mess, which I think we all agreed with, just like the previous few coaches that inherited a mess. And he said the fan base needs to be really patient. Well, we've heard that a long time also. But in terms of that, you also look at the attrition. So this coach thinks that it might be a long year for Tennessee.
The big topic coming out of that game, I think, was Joe Milton. That's what everybody always focuses on, the quarterback. I looked at it, and I thought he reminded me of me. And here's what I mean by that.
Okay.
15 years ago, David Hall. People remember Hall Salvage being the founder of this feast years ago, wherever David is today. I know he's watching, so thanks. David gave me a toolkit. This thing was spectacular. It's got every tool in the world in this thing. It's all neatly laid. It's great. The problem is, in 15 years, I think I've used the tape measure, the hammer, and the screwdriver because I can't build anything. I think Milton has all the tools, just like I do, but I'm not sure he knows what to do with them, just like I don't. Your thoughts on Milton? Is he an athlete playing quarterback? Or do you think that was one game, don't rush this? What were your takeaways on Joe Milton? He looked pretty slow to process back there.
He did look pretty slow to process, but he had a lot of time, so it's kind of like the same thing. Are you playing with the team in front of you and what you're getting and some of that, but he's got to have to speed that up. But at the same time, you saw some good things. You saw some passes across the middle that his wide receivers dropped that are not his fault that would have kept drives alive.
Yep.
And so would have looked better if he'd gotten more time out there. You also saw a guy that when he runs, he's actually good enough to beat people and be a dangerous presence out there. So there were some things that you can build upon, and it may be a different set of plays and designs that you go to where it is like you're looking at it and go, we're not a pure passing team right now. We're an athletic team, so we have to design what we're going to do around him differently and expect to get those kinds of things. So I think it's the coaching staff coming together with him and saying, what are you comfortable doing? What are you good at? Let's find that.
We're going to talk a lot more about Milton in this show, but let me get 60 seconds out of both of you. Just your general first thoughts on Milton. You mentioned you had concerns about the pass game. Talk to me about him specifically.
Well, the reason he lost the job when he was in Michigan was his lack of accuracy, his lack of touch, and his decision making. Some of that cropped up again, so that concerns me.
Just that? He could stand without spiking himself, though.
So didn't some of that crop up? I thought it did. So that concerns me. Now, going forward, what did Michigan ask him to do? I don't know specifically. What's Tennessee asking him to do that's different from Michigan? I don't know that either. But the first game concerned me a little bit. Does that mean you should make a final judgment on him? No. But I am concerned about going forward. He needs to show considerable progress.
Bob, opening thoughts on Joe Milton and his performance?
I'll go to a quote I read on a message board from a guy who said he's a Michigan fan. He's cheering for Joe Milton. He said, but after watching the entirety of the Tennessee Bowling Green game, he said, I saw the exact same thing I saw 4 games last year, and he says, that concerns me. And he reiterated, I'm really pulling for Joe Milton to be successful. Seems like a good kid. But the same exact things, and every one of them is what you just touched on. So, you know, you're still talking 5 games as a starter in big-time college football, but at some point in time, you are what you are, to quote a former coach, I think.
And just to finish out on him, something that stood out to me the other night after the game, in case you saw his comments where he said he played well. He was talking about the offense. He said, well, when you're a guy like me and you've got all the tools in this offense, that doesn't seem like either. Maybe that's a front that he's putting on to cover the fact he didn't play well, or this guy really has a self-inflated view of himself. He did come out the next day on Friday and said, well, I'd give myself about a C+, that I held on to the ball too long. that made me feel a whole lot better. That, okay, he gets it, or at least Heupel has gotten it to him since that game the other night. But I thought, for those of you who might not have saw what he said Friday, might not have seen what he said Friday, need to hear that, because it certainly eased my concerns over what he said Thursday.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, it sure did. All right, when we come back, let's talk about Tennessee's big rushing day. Are we buying or selling the Vols' run game stock while it's high? Come on back on the Sports Source.